The Club Championship Show on OTB in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Hashtag the toughest.
Welcome along to the Club Championship Show here on OTB Sports, brought to you by AIB. We've got a very busy weekend ahead with the intermediate and junior hurling and football finals at Croke Park. We'll be looking back on the semi-finals in the weekend just gone by, which included the two senior semi-finals. We know it's going to be Kilmacud Crokes for the second year in a row going for the American Cup when they go up against first-time All-Ireland finalists and first-time Ulster champions Glen. We'll be talking to Colm Keys a little bit later on in the programme. We'll hear from Kilmacud Crokes boss Robbie Brennan and also Malky O'Rourke giving us a Glen perspective a little bit later on. But we begin by looking forward to the games this weekend, including Saturday night. It is the second of a double header, the All-Ireland Club Intermediate Hurling Championship Final, where Touché of Mayo are up against Monaleen of Limerick, 7pm at Croke Park. Delighted to say that Andrew Touché Cosgrave of Monaleen is with us. Andrew, how are you getting on this morning?
I'm good now, and yourself?
Look, I'm good. Look, All-Ireland week, you're no stranger to it at inter-county level, with Limerick having been an All-Ireland medalist back in 2018. But to be here with your club, and particularly when I think of the year that you've just had as well, where you were having surgery, coming back from injury, back then for the big games this year, like the county final and the run through the provincial, it must be fantastic to be looking forward to an All-Ireland final at Croke Park with your club. Yeah,
it's surreal, as I said. It's amazing. Like, you'd never think you'd get there. And just from a personal level, it's great for myself, kind of with the work I had done, done to me, and with the team I had around to get me back. It's just surreal, like, because I didn't think I'd be hurling at all this year, So just to be in an All-Ireland final with the club is just unreal.
Yeah, because I was reading about the fact that I think it was your granddad was driving you along to watch the team at different times during the year because you couldn't drive directly after the surgery. It must have felt a long way back at that stage.
I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel, as they say. The old fella was bringing me up to trainings and to the matches and that, and because he'd be heavily involved. And I'm just watching the lads train, and I was in a boot and I couldn't walk, and the crutches, and I just it's only for the boys doing so well. It gave me hope, and as I said to other people, I saw a spark when I'm watching the training, watching how the boys trained the lads. I just kind of knew that there was something brewing there. So thankfully it's all coming off, and one more step to go now.
Well, look, during your absence, they did the job in what proved to be a very competitive Premier Intermediate Championship in Limerick this year. Because, look, sometimes a club goes down and they get into a rut, but it felt like there was a real determination within your club to get back up to the senior ranks again as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's you probably heard me saying it, or anyone from Limerick, that Premier Intermediate group, it's chaotic altogether. Anything can happen in that group. So I suppose the goal was to even get a semi-final, finish in the top four, get onto a county final promotion, the back of my mind. But as I said, this is all bonus territory, so it is, again, it's all just all surreal.
And Andrew, what was the difference, would you say? You said that when you're injured and you're watching, you seen a spark. So what was the difference, would you say, within the squad, getting relegated from senior and then going straight back up? So what was the main difference this year?
I suppose it's very hard to put your finger on it. It's one of them things now where in a week's time or a month's time you'll sit down and be like, look, that's what was the trigger point. It's very hard to put your finger on it, but there's just so much stuff, like the hurling committee that was started at first, and then we had our own initiative as players to go back to the gym in October time, and then we had a bit of luck getting a great management involved, and then the youth in our club was brilliant, and they really drove us older lads. So there's just loads of stuff that you can kind of pick out from. So I don't actually know what is the trigger that turned it, if you know what I'm saying.
And sometimes, probably have to reach that low point in order to push on and get the highs of obviously an All-Ireland final now. Would you say that it was quite a low point within the club when you got relegated?
It was, of course. Now, as I said, we got relegated, but we knew we were better than that, and it was ourselves. We weren't 100% committed. We kind of just went through the motions for 2 years or so, and COVID had a lot to play as well. Like, I think we had 3 matches and you're relegated. Like, we had two group games the way it was. And look, we were grateful that we could play games during COVID, like, but that has a lot to play as well. So yeah, it was just it came from ourselves as well. We were like, we don't belong down here, like, so it was a kind of a drive in itself, having getting relegated.
I heard you say about a month ago that there was this perception around Limerick that perhaps you were a little bit of a soft touch. Was there a fairness about that, or was that something you were determined to prove wasn't actually the case?
Well, we would have heard it every now and again. Like, you'd hear managers saying it to us X, Y, and Z at times, but there would have been a degree of it a few years ago. Like, but I definitely think that the management this year have got that out of us, and now there's still more to go on us. Like, but it definitely is something that we had talked about a lot. Like, that we just don't want to have that name, So I think we fairly rectify it now, and it feels better to have that put to bed.
Yeah, the management this year. So Owen Brisland from Tipperary, the former Tip hurler, and people probably know him through Toomey Vara as well, came into the club. What's he changed, or what's the management been like this year then?
They've changed everything. Again, very hard to put your finger on it, but the whole thing has just been turned upside down, and that's fairly evident. An All-Ireland final, Munster champions, county champions, just history being made. Like, I don't know what it was. It's just he's very good. He's very good with us. It's just like a natural rapport with us and the trainers. So credit to Owen and his team. They've been fantastic. Like.
And what a great run you're on now at the moment. It's like, in a way, priority number one would have been to win the county championship and get yourselves back to senior. That's goal number one. But to become the first team from the club to win a provincial title with that victory against Cosgrave last month, and now to be going on to an All-Ireland final, you're probably aware of what a fantastic achievement this is, with, your mates, your neighbours, the guys that you grew up with as well.
Yeah, it's mad. I said in an interview after the Cosgrave game, like, it's all just bonus territory, It's again, I keep saying it's not even probably going to hit us till a couple of weeks down the line, it's all bonus territory, and we wouldn't even have heard of a Monaleen team getting into the provincial and the All-Ireland series, and then just if you sit back and look at it for a second and you realise, okay, hang on a minute, you're actually in an All-Ireland final, it's fairly mad, like.
Can you draw on some of your experiences then at inter-county level going into this? Because for many of your teammates, it's going to be something new. I know they've got a provincial medal now in the bag, but going to Croke Park, you've obviously been there, played there, been with the Limerick senior team, been with Limerick underage teams that were successful as well. Do you try and kind of impart some of your experience, or are the lads nice and calm going into this week anyway?
Look, the lads are very, very, they're very with it. I'll say a few words to them, all right. They'll probably sick of listening to me anyhow, but they know what's at stake. They're very intelligent young lads. The older lads are very intelligent as well. They're all as cool as a breeze. There'll be nothing new. Like I said it before, we're going in, it's still a field. You still have 4 lines, you still have 2 goalposts. So nothing changes. It's a great place to play a match, absolutely, but nothing changes to what we want to do.
And what's it like for the club and I suppose all the underage players, your family, to know that you're taking the club to Croke Park?
Yeah, that's what makes it sweet, like with the county you kind of have the whole county involved with you, but with the club it's the people that you see all year round, and it's great to see. Now I'm in Dublin at the minute, but when I was down the weekend, it's great to see the whole place being done up with Monaleen flags and that, and it's great for the club and the family as well. It's great for the family. It's just a big day out in Croke Park. Some of them wouldn't have went up before because they just mightn't have been able. But with the club, it's just a bit different. You might have that drive to get up there quicker than a county match. Like.
There is something I think remarkably special about it. We were chatting about this a couple of weeks ago. When during the presidency of Sean Kelly, when the championships were brought in for club intermediate and junior, and then it moved towards Croke Park being the venue for the finals as well. Like, when we look forward to that double header this coming weekend, for the clubs that are involved, this is an unforgettable moment to bring their club to Croke Park.
Oh, it's not forgettable, but at the end of the day, we still have a job to do. I'd say it'll be pretty forgettable if you don't win. And I know that myself because I was up there with Limerick in 2014 when we lost to Kilkenny. And it's a very daunting place. Like in 2018, it was great winning the All-Ireland, but when you're playing and if you don't win, it's I can't even describe the feeling. So, like, as I said, at the end of the day, we're not going to get caught up in just playing in Croke Park. We're going up to do a job, and hopefully we can come down with a trophy. I'm
not sure how much Fergal Boland will have given away when you were getting the photos taken yesterday ahead of the final, but how much do you know about Toreen? On the face of it, like, seem to be almost perennial Mayo champions at this stage, provide a lot of the backbone of the Mayo inter-county team as well. What's your feeling, or what have you learned about your opponents for this Saturday night?
Look, we know they're a fantastic hurling team. We played Bray and they were very physical and they're great hurlers. But we know now that this Turin team, like, they're senior champions. They have the backbone as the Mayo hurlers, as you say. So we know that we're up against a very hard test. And like Mayo hurling does the same amount of hurling as Limerick hurling, just because they mightn't be getting the same rewards for it, but they're still inter-county hurlers, and we're taking that away from Turin, how incredible they are, and they're a big threat. So we have to do our homework on them, and if we just stick to our passes, we look to come out on top.
Andrew, just a final one from me. You mentioned, at the outset that you didn't really see a light at the end of the tunnel, and it was very difficult when you were injured and having to watch on and see your teammates. You've had a couple of years that have been affected by injury along the way. Does it almost make you, I guess, a little bit thankful to have days like this when you've had to watch on and you've had those frustrations over the last 18 months, 2 years particularly?
It does, but at the end of the day, even if I wasn't playing, like, I know a friend of mine now, he's actually on the team, John, he got an operation on his, like, same thing as me. Not the same thing, but he's in a boot, he can't walk, like, so I know myself that if I was injured and watching the lads, it's a great thing personally, but it's not, that's the joy of it. It's nothing to do personally. We're doing this together, we're in this together, we're in this for the club, we're in this for our friends, our family, our management. So we all want to be off the same hymn sheet and just enjoy it as much as each other. Like, there's no one kind of enjoying it any bit sweeter than anyone else. So we're all just kind of in it together, if you know what I mean. Well,
look, good luck at Croke Park on Saturday evening. Thanks a million for joining us on the show.
No problem. Thanks a million.
There you go, Ash. I can't help but be excited for the prospect of these clubs.
Yeah.
Because when initially these competitions came in, it was kind of low profile at the start. We'll talk a little bit about Clifford and Clifford Mania at O'Moore Park at the weekend.
Yeah.
But these are amazing moments for the clubs to get a chance like this weekend to go to Croke Park. And I even like looking at the players going yesterday and the night before to get their pictures taken at Croke Park beforehand. Like, it's an amazing buzz that's built around these finals this weekend.
Yeah, thank God we have these competitions, like you had mentioned. Like Andrew there said that he, never thought this would be possible with his club, and it is extra sweet, as he said, to be there with your club, obviously with your county. It's a massive achievement too, but to be there with the people you grew up with, and this is what you hear constantly when you're speaking to the players. Like, we're here with the lads and girls we actually grew up with, and the managers that took us underage the whole way, and there's just such special stories in it, Will. And yeah, you definitely do feel that buzz when you're there in Croke Park, or you're speaking to the players after, or wherever the games are. I've always got that bit of an extra buzz about it because it is your club, it's your community and the whole lot. So it's definitely really special, and they're going to be great games this weekend, so I'm definitely looking forward to them.
Yeah, very busy weekend coming up. We might just take a look at the results in the weekend just gone by to start things off, because you were out and about last weekend and actually saw quite a few of the matches. You were out both Saturday and Sunday. So taking a look at the results then from the weekend just gone by, starting off with the games that, well, first of all, you were at O'Moore Park, so you got to see the Junior Football Championship game between Fossa of Kerry and Castletown of Meath. Fossa coming through in the end by 3 goals and 14 points to 11 points. The other game went to extra time, and it was a victory in the end for Stewartstown Harps of Tyrone by 114 to 1 goal and 9 against Clifton of Galway. Garrett Devlin, the veteran former Tyrone player, scoring a remarkable 1 goal and 6 points during the match. In the Intermediate Football Championship, again, Kerry and Tyrone coming through in these games. Ratmore of Kerry defeating Feathered of Wexford by 2 goals and 16 points to 1 goal and 10 at Porky Rin. And Galbally Pierces overcoming Dunmore McHale's of Galway. Ronan Nugent with a hat-trick in the first half for Galbally in that one, as they came through by 4 goals and 4 points to 1 goal and 9. As we'll be talking about the seniors a little bit later on with Colm Keys, but just for anyone who missed the games from Sunday at Croke Park, Kilmacud Crokes into back-to-back finals. Hugh Kenny with 1 goal and 2 points for the Dublin and Leinster champions as they overcame Kerins O'Reilly's of Kerry in the end by 114 to 14 points. And then we 2 first-time provincial winners who were meeting in the semi-final, and it was Glen of Derry who came out on top against Moycullen in the end by a couple of points, 1 goal and 11 to 12 points. So if I can bring you back to Saturday, first of all, you were at O'Moore Park. By the sounds of it, it was a Clifford show in that it was Paddy and David who did a lot of the damage. David got 7 points. I think Paddy was instrumental, it seemed, Ash, in setting up scores for Fossa too.
Big time, yeah. I think both of them are so influential, but even the players they have around them, you know, a lot of people said to me after the game, is it just the Clifford show? Did they just run the show? And it's really not. You know, they have such talented players within the squad, and, you know, I suppose they know how to play with the Cliffords. They know their strong points. They know how to give them the space, but at the same time for David, like, what did he get? I think it was 7-8 points, but he set up so much as well, and you know, it's just unbelievable to see him over in the corner and he grabs the ball and he's just like coming back and forth doing his little dinks, and then he just takes his man on and he just leaves him for dead. Like, it's cruel sometimes to see him at that level. But for Castletown, I think they'll take a lot from it. Like, they're a great side. You know, even speaking to some of the players after, they, you know, were delighted to be there. To, you know, obviously they'd love to have won it, but they are so happy with the run that they've been on. And, you know, to get the chance to play against David Clifford, Paddy Clifford, you know, I think it's something that they'll never forget. But the pandemonium that went on with it all, Will, was just something else. It was obviously my first time to see David Clifford for his club, and I couldn't get over the amount of people. Like, I know we've seen it on Twitter, we've seen the videos, but my God, it was different level. You know, it was coming over the intercoms, you know, please don't go onto the pitch till the final whistle. So it wasn't don't go on the pitch.
And some of the children actually went on the pitch before the full-time whistle.
Yeah.
I saw them having to kind of usher back into the corner and then go back out again.
So they were all lined up, so that it wasn't that you couldn't go on the pitch, because sometimes that's the case. It was just wait for the final whistle, and before the whistle goes, they just run on. But here's David now that I spoke to him just straight after the game.
I will hear from David Clifford in a second. Someone was a bit too fast on the trigger there. Wanted to hear from David Clifford even beforehand. But two very well taken goals for Fossa coming up to half time probably made a difference as well. A bit of a swirling wind, but the goals that Emmett O'Shea and Cian O'Shea score put them into a very good position, because they're going in 2-7-6 with the elements to come in the second half then.
Yeah, this is it. And that wind was very, very strong. Like, in the first half, Fossa had the wind, and I think Castletown, that was a big blow for them. You know, they would have liked to had the wind for that little bit of extra advantage, because obviously they might have felt they were up against it anyway. But yeah, Fossa had it. They took advantage of it, and then coming out in the second half and getting that goal really was a sucker blow for Castletown. And from then on, you sort of saw their heads drop a small bit. You know, there was a few balls just ballooned in and things like that. And I suppose that all happens when you're, you know, a couple of points down, and, you know, your panic station sort of starting to kick in. You could definitely see that. But Fossa, I think they really wanted to finish strong. Like, I saw David, he sort of signalled to the management, like, I don't know if he was signalling to say bring on the subs or let's keep it going. Now, I think he was saying bring on the subs to give them all a run. And the minute he said it, you know, the management started turning to each other and they started bringing all the lads off the bench. When I asked the management after the game, he said no, he was just saying to keep it going to just keep up the momentum and finish the game out strong. Maybe he did, but I thought it was funny that maybe he did say to bring on the subs, and they all got on, and they all sort of, you know, got their chance, because the next game's Croke Park. It's a final, you mightn't get your time there, so it's important to give these lads a run, and so many of them that came on made an impact as well. So it's definitely not just the Clifford show. But it was very interesting to watch him for his club. I thought, yeah, he is a very special player. Like, I don't know, have you ever seen this, Will, like, within the GA before to this level?
Not really. I did wonder about this on Saturday.
Yeah.
There've been some players who it was very clear they were going to be stars from a young age. And I'm thinking of Joe Canning, I'm thinking of Michael Murphy in recent times, even Henry Shetland to an extent.
Yeah.
Used to get mobbed after games. But for people to go and actually watch them, I don't think since Canning, because there were friends of mine who went to Portlaoise on Saturday. They weren't the kids who were on the pitch afterwards. They were just in the stand to watch him play.
I bet you they were.
But they went along when the option was there. The game was being streamed. They could easily have just sat at home, paid their few quid and watched it there. But they wanted to actually go and watch Clifford in the flesh playing for his club.
Yeah.
To see someone do that for a junior championship team particularly is remarkable. And there is this kind of superstar quality to him, plus the way that he carries himself. This is a guy who, he's nearly 50 games, I think, into the calendar year at this point, if we take it back to this time last year. He's had no break pretty much whatsoever because of the way the intercounty went after a run to the Sigerson final. and the fact that then he went pretty much directly into Fossa, played for them, also played for East Kerry in the regional championship within Kerry, then to play a provincial campaign, and now to go all the way to an All-Ireland final. Yet the guy just seems the calmest person on the field every day.
Yeah, he's just loving it. And I think that's, if you have that superstar quality, you probably have to have that calmness about you and take it all in your stride. And that's exactly what he done with the amount of people that ran on towards him. Like, it jolted him back. Like, he was shaking his marker's hand, and he turned, and it was just, and I'm sure he was expecting it. He obviously could see, but yeah, it's just unbelievable. Like, even to get an interview for me, it was the toughest thing I've done in a while. Like, I obviously went there with a name to get the David Clifford interview, and I remember I was running around and a few people turned to me and they said, "You're fighting a losing battle here." I was like, "Yeah, I know." And I was running from one way to the other way, and I actually had learned at O'Moore Park that the changing rooms up the far end, they actually go out through the tunnel and then out to the bus this way. So I'd learned that from the Kilcoo game last year. So
good market research before you went.
But I managed to get in anyway inside, just outside the changing rooms, because there was a mob waiting for him after the game as well. Like, obviously immediately after, but then even when they came out of the changing rooms, you know, there was a lot of stewards all sort of waiting around trying to get him out. But thankfully I just asked one of the guys from their club, you know, if at all possible, but like, I don't want to put any pressure on him. And I'd say within 2 minutes, well, he walked out of the changing room, said, "Oh yeah, no bother." I was like, jeez, didn't think, like, after there was about 100 people, 200, 300 people trying to look for your autograph and selfies and everything else, that he would. But no, lovely lad.
Also would be perfectly understandable if at this stage he's had a long year, lots happened, he's done
you're tired.
a million interviews over the last year for various different reasons, because of, you know, being footballer of the year and the fact that Kerry had, you know, got themselves a title what felt like a famine before they broke it this year. He's probably worn out talking about success, but still he enjoys talking about his club.
Yeah. And you could see that when I spoke to him, like, he sort of lit up with all of that, you know, that he's back in with his club, and it's really nice that he thought that there was a chance that this would never happen. So yeah, you can definitely feel that from him, and I think it would just be the cherry on top now if they could go the whole way. And I'm sure that's how he feels, because what he's won this year, I didn't want to list out everything that he had won to him, but I'd be there a while, because it has been one successful year for him. And I know we're in 2023, but you know, it is the 2022 season as well, and this would just be, I think, cap it all off of the most successful year possible, really.
Let's hear from David Clifford then, speaking to Ash at O'Moore Park after Fossa's win at the weekend.
It is definitely, yeah. Obviously, look, the Kerry stuff is what you always look to do when you're growing up. Whereas with Fossa, like, it was probably days we were questioning maybe whether this would ever happen first, because the Kerry Championship is so strong. So now, you know, as I said, it's special, and I suppose it'll be all undone is the only thing if we don't get over the line next week. So everything is riding on that one.
Yeah, you have a big test, a Tyrone team, Stewartstown. Do you know anything about them?
Yeah, I think the lads have done a bit of research there now as the year was going on. I'm sure we had someone up there watching them as well. So no, they'll be very tough. Look, in any Tyrone team, you know what you're going to get. Always have very skillful forwards and are always going to keep it very tight at the back. So no, it's going to be very difficult, yeah.
This is my first time seeing you play for your club. The pandemonium that goes on with it, I couldn't believe the amount of people. I've seen the videos obviously on Twitter, but the amount of people that ran on before the final whistle, then they had to go off and then they ran again. How do you find all of that? Because obviously it's an amateur sport, playing for your local club, like, it's mad.
It's mad. I was afraid some kid was going to get hurt out there. No, it is. Look, it's great. It's probably worse when you come outside of Kerry. I think the Kerry people are probably used to seeing us now. So, sure, look, it's great. It's great to be some sort of a role model to kids out there. If it keeps them playing Gaelic football for a bit longer, it's great.
Yeah, and look, your entry pretty much went viral over the weekend, because this is what happens. People hear about
David Clifford.
People were like, "Oh, Clifford got mobbed," so therefore they see the video. It's like, "Oh, here's Clifford talking about getting mobbed," so it's the right time at the right place. But I think he has a great attitude there, which is these are kids who are interested in the game. If I can potentially keep them interested in Gaelic football, that's a bonus. I just go out and play, and if these kids want to come and talk to me, great.
That's it. And it, like, the amount of kids that would have left O'Moore Park wanting to go out and kick football out the back garden or go out to their local club, like, it has a knock-on effect, definitely. There's no doubt about it. And he's delighted with that side of things. You know, if that's what it's doing, then, you know, it's only a positive thing. And yeah, he's such a role model within the game. But as we were saying, I don't know if I've ever seen this level. You know, the Gooch was up there as well, but I think this is taken to a new level. But phenomenal player, and to see him with his club, it was something else. Well,
it's extra special maybe seeing him even operate at that level. So Stewartstown Harps are their opponents this coming Sunday lunchtime at Croke Park. It's a quick enough turnaround in the 8 days. Stewartstown winning against Clifton in the end after extra time at Dr. Hyde Park. Clifton would be left a little bit disappointed because they missed a freeze and they also missed a penalty during the game too. Ger Gibbons had a very good game for them. He got 8 from 9 from set pieces but saw his penalty saved. And then it was Gareth Devlin who made the difference. As I mentioned a bit earlier, 1 goal and 6 points he got. Stewartstown were behind for the vast majority of that game. They got themselves level really late on. Jason Park, one of their defenders, ended up in the scoring position to kick the point that sent it to extra time, and they just had that little bit extra in extra time to get over. So they'd probably be a difficult enough nut to crack when it comes to the final. Particularly they found themselves behind at half time, having played with the wind. So they had to dig in a little bit in that game.
That's it, and I think that'll stand to them. And a Tyrone and Kerry team coming up against each other, it's always interesting, I think, for Kerry as well. I'm thinking back to the semi-final, the All-Ireland semi-final. Obviously, David Clifford, when I asked him about Stewartstown, he said, you know what you get with a Tyrone team. They're going to be defensively solid, and Stewartstown definitely are. They left a lot behind them in that game as well, that they probably wouldn't have been happy with, but to come out the other end was the main thing. Like, the scores were coming out over Moore Park constantly, and we were hearing that it was going extra time and the whole lot. So it'll be tough for them after only 8 days. Well, that's a very short period of time,
especially you played extra time
exactly
last week.
Yeah, big time. So I think that could have an effect too. But look, I suppose they're both in the same boat really. I know extra time's a little bit more, but still, they're both in the same boat, that they were played the same day. So it'll be a very, very tough one to call, that one, but that's going to be very interesting.
Intermediate Football Championship semi-finals the weekend gone by. Again, Kerry and Tyrone coming through. Rathmore or Kerry, who were strong favourites going into their game against Federative Wexford, coming through in the end 216 to 110. Probably the most noteworthy thing for Rathmore, and probably something good for them going into the final. 10 different scores they had across the team, which is incredible. Shane Ryan, the Kerry goalkeeper, and his brother Mark got 1-7 between them during the game.
That's unreal, isn't it? That he plays outfield. Well, as a corner forward, isn't it?
Yeah, and as Maurice Brosnan mentioned, he's at a point now where I think his shoulder needs surgery, but there's no way that's going to happen before the final is finished this Sunday afternoon. So maybe he gets assessed. I don't know how much of the league he'll potentially miss for Kerry, but he's proven very, very important for them. Scored his first goal in the 12th minute during the game. Then they went off and they reeled off 2-5. And then bizarrely, Rathmore after that, who had found themselves 11 points down, actually managed to bring it back to 4 and bring it to a bit of a game. But then Rathmore had a little bit too much in the end. So there's incredible Kerry dominance at this level, Ash, as well. 9 times in 16 years.
Unreal.
They provided a finalist in the All-Ireland Club Intermediate Football. So maybe that says a lot about the composition of the Kerry Championships, where the strength is. Yeah,
big time. And obviously we're going to talk about the senior semi-finals as well, but you could see there wasn't a massive difference in the level, so obviously it went right to the wire, a goal in it in the end. It could have went either way. But even just for Kerry to have 3 teams competing at the weekend was something else. But you can definitely see the dominance within the Kerry Championship and the strength of it.
Yeah, so the other finalists then are Galbally Pierce's mentioned Ronan Nugent scored a hat-trick of goals in the first half. They were to a very unusual position with the scoreline. 3 goals and a point to 1 goal and 5. 4 scores in the first half and 3 of them bringing up green flags. But then in the second half, Dunmore McHale's of Galway took control. And it looked like they were about to win the game. And then Daniel Kerr got a goal very late on for Galbally, who sent them through. So they had to scrap through a little bit at St. Norman's for that one. But as we mentioned, Tyrone against Kerry in that final. We've also got the senior finals coming up on Sunday week. And we know that it's going to be a meeting of Derry and Dublin in the senior final. First time since 1995, champions that year, Kilmacud Crokes.
Right.
So maybe they'll be hoping that's an omen after what happened last year. Delighted to say that Colm Keys is with us now. Colm, how are you getting on? We'll go across to Colm in a second. But Kilmacud Crokes leading in the end against Karen Rags, coming through 114 to 14 points. There was big expectation about Kilmacud going into this semi-final last week. What did you make of their performance?
Yeah, they were hot favourites going in, Will, and it wasn't the case that they had it all their own way. I thought that was how I personally thought it might go, but I think a lot of people thought that, Kerins O'Reilly, they weren't going to be able to keep with this Kilmacud team, and I think it was a point in it. Was it a point at half time? 2 points in it, sorry, half time, and then a goal in it in the end, and it all came down to that free, oh my God, and David Moore just got a fist to it, and I thought it was going in and it was just saved off the line. And yeah, Kilmacud lived to see the final once again. But it was deja vu of what happened last year against Kilcoo. And, you know, speaking to their manager afterwards, you know, I said, you must have been heart in your mouth stuff. And he said, absolutely. Like, how can we not close out games? And it is a bit of a concern, you know, for them. And they had so many chances.
You raised the point last week, and it was a very fair one. So this is the most they've conceded, 14 scores, since they played against Naas in the Leinster quarterfinals.
Yeah.
But then they had two very comfortable victories against Portarlington and against the Downs in their semi-final and final. So therefore, they haven't really been pushed this close since, particularly the Naas game, or maybe even since the Dublin Championship. There was maybe that feeling, you know, when it's about closing out games, that they haven't had to really close the last two out because they had both those games won by half time.
That's it, and you can have all the strength and depth and all the talented players, but if you can't actually go out and have this really strong opposition to be able to, you know, work on things, to be able to, you know, put in performances together, and I don't think they overly had that because they were maybe that bit stronger than the likes of the Leinster teams. So coming up against Kerins or I think you could see a few holes, but maybe this will be the turning point for them now that they've had that, and they'll go into the next game now and they'll see this massive performance, you know. It could go either way, but yeah, it definitely was probably a bit of a close call for them. They would have liked to close the game out a hell of a lot easier, but they got over the line, and they won't care either way, that they're in the finals, all that matters.
Absolutely. Colm Keys is with us now. Colm, we're just chatting about Kilmacud Crokes' victory there, and you know, Robbie Brennan admitted afterwards, and I thought maybe this would be something he might have missed after the final and when the trophy is presented, that his screensaver on his phone is still Kilcoo going up to get the cup last year. So it seems very clear what Kilmacud Crokes have been drawing inspiration from this season.
There's no doubt he said it was on one of his screensavers. He didn't necessarily say all the players had it, but it's a personal reminder for him of that heartbreaking defeat last year. Although a much more tangible reminder, I feel, will be those last few moments that you've just been speaking about there with regard to last Sunday's semi-final. And, you know, they were very, very comfortable, I thought, for a lot of that game. And for some reason, they just retreated in the last 6-7 minutes and allowed Kerins O'Reilly's team, who I felt were never that close to them, even though they had David Moran playing so well at midfield. They almost invited them on to them at the end. And even before that last attack, there was another one previously where you could just see the panic was palpable in Kilmacud Crokes, and maybe it stems from last year, you know, in a big game in Croke Park. Obviously they played two more games in Leinster there, but they weren't even close. But maybe there was a bit of memory from that coming back to them in those closing stages. That fear of what happened, it's probably always going to be there. And I suppose it's better it's happened them here than maybe in the final in 2 weeks' time, because they can really steel themselves and build themselves around it. But yeah, very candid from Robbie to admit that before the final. You wouldn't often see it, but he's quite open like that.
Yeah, I definitely think there was a psychological side to a Colm when it came to the lead being lost, because I thought when they went 7 points up, it felt like, right, this is the moment where, like the last few games, they're going to work their way through this, and it'll probably be a similar margin come full time. But in the end, it gets pulled back to 3 points. I think there was a little bit of white line fever for them here.
I think there probably was, and also that they haven't really been tested. And again, you've mentioned that since. I wouldn't even say they were tested in the Naas game, because they got out early in that game with goals midway through the first half and were really in control, and was really they were always 7, 8, 9 points ahead in that game. So really the second half of the Nafina game in Dublin was the last time that they probably felt they were really in a battle until last Sunday. And at times they were comfortable last Sunday too. So It was probably a more recent experience for them to be in such a battle, because they just haven't had them. They didn't have them against the Downs. They didn't have it against Portarlington, even though Portarlington were one of the teams that tested them best in the previous year's campaign. So their defence has been very, very good and has held up. And although they conceded those 14 scores, another clean sheet now. So that's five in a row. And I feel if they could add a sixth clean sheet, it'd be a long way to winning that club title.
Yeah, before we come in, Ash, you mentioned the fact that second half maybe they got a little bit more of a handle on David Moran, but first half particularly he ruled the skies entirely around midfield.
Yeah, I think that was probably an area that Colm they were probably tested most in was midfield. Obviously David Moran, one of the best midfielders there is in the country, but I think when they changed in that second half to, I think it was Rory O'Carroll that came in then on in the second half that went on him then, and there wasn't as much fielding in the second half that he'd done in the first, and that probably gave them a bit of a handle on the game as a whole.
Yeah, and I was probably surprised he was as dominant, because Craig Diaz has been playing very well, and while he didn't pair off in that game, in that area he has been going very well. But David Moran is an absolute master fielder of the ball and also distributor too. Obviously, box to box wouldn't be like what it once was for him. But under kickouts, there are few, if anyone, better in the game than David Moran to stand under a kickout like that, catch it, make space for himself, and distribute the ball. And obviously it'll augur well for Kerry and his prospects of remaining on with Kerry too. But he certainly gave Kerins O'Reilly a very, very strong hold there for a long time. And I felt all their principles. Jack Savage moved very well as well in the early stages. Barry John Keane looked lively. Tommy Walsh started well. He started well, but probably faded with the service of ball, didn't come into him after that. But David Moran, for sure, really gave Kilmacud a lot of problems. Yeah,
I thought if the ball was a bit quicker into Tommy, especially in that second half, like he was showing for it many of the times, but they just couldn't lay it off in time, and then they were blocked up again and it wasn't on. If they were that bit quicker, it felt at times they were just that bit slower, Kerins.
Yeah, sometimes Tommy likes the hopping ball in front of him. He's actually quite good to get out in front of a hopping ball like that, but on this occasion he was very, very well marked, and I thought the ball played into him was probably coming from too far out when it was put in there, and he was a little bit behind. So in that regard there was a bit of a disconnect. I just felt that at that stage Crokes were on top until those last maybe 5 or 10 minutes, when the ball was a lot more threatening being put across, because they had retreated and invited Kerins O'Reilly onto them.
When it comes to that midfield sector as well, Colm, I'm sure Glenn will be looking at this video and reviewing it along the way. Considering the strength they have in the middle third, and we saw that in the other semi-final as well, is that an area where they'll feel maybe they can get some change now in the final after what Kieran O'Reilly did in midfield the last time?
I would say so. I think Conor Glass and Emmett Bradley are a very, very formidable midfield partnership. They could well be the midfield partnership for Derry, the All-Ireland semi-finalists, and at some stages in last year's championship they actually were the midfield partnership. And Emmett Bradley, while he may not make it for 70 minutes at intercounty championship level, for 60 minutes at club level, he's a real presence there, and he can get up the field and score points. You saw the 2 points from play he scored the last day, and then Conor Glass. I always feel, look, obviously he has made, since he returned from AFL, he has made a huge difference to Derry, and now obviously Glen too. So he makes a huge difference to both teams, but I feel there's even more in him from an attacking point of view yet. He was superb defensively the last day, and he got forward to kick one score, but I always feel there's more in him. There's actually more in him, but I feel it's an area that Glen can surely dominate, and I think Kilmacud are going to have to get out in front to win this game, because if they're chasing it, it's going to be very, very difficult with Glass performing that screening role that he does so well. He's like an extra defender there, and he does it really well. So yeah, I think it's an area where Glen can really get some gains.
Yeah, I think Conor, he was so impressive to watch. Obviously Emmett, I thought that was the best performance I'd seen from Emmett Bradley in a long, long time. Those 2 points in particular, I know one went to Hawkeye as well. I thought it was over, but it was ruled out. But I think Conor as well, he does all the hard work. He gets back and he's still so composed then when he gets up to lay his shot off, and he scored a great score as well. But Malachy was saying afterwards that, you know, he was sick all week and that he had a flu or a cold, so he wasn't at his best, and it's unreal, as Colm was saying. Like, you know, he could go to you tights. You can see this from him. Like, you can feel that he's that type of player, that there's going to be big performances to come. And yeah, just that midfield, I would not like to be coming up against it if I was Kilmacud, that's for sure.
No, they're a tough nut to crack, Colm. This could make for a very interesting final. Like, both these teams are good at defending their own goal. You mentioned already how good Crokes are at it, but Glen were very good. They forced Monaleen into making some poor decisions with the ball they were putting into their forward line as well. We could well see a very good final of attack and counter-attack in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, and the two counter-attackers that they have chiefly are Jack Doherty and Ethan Doherty on the half-forward line, but two great ball carriers. Certainly Jack Doherty, and he's very distinguishable by the colour of his hair. He was very, very noticeable, very prominent in the game last weekend. He really took it to Monaleen time and time again. He's a real heads-up footballer, a smart footballer, and a really, really good kick passer too. That was very noticeable. In contrast to Monaleen, who rarely kicked the ball, and they really played into Glen's hands. Once Glen got that 4-0 lead, I felt it wasn't game over, but the momentum was really with Glen then, because they could pack that D, knowing that Monalen's game style is almost a crash ball through Sean Kelly and Owen Gallagher and these players who love to play it through the hands all the time. And I felt they played into Glen's hands by repeatedly doing that and not trying to create more space up front. It was very, very difficult for Monaleen, because when Glen set themselves up that way, they were really, really hard to beat. So Monaleen played into their hands, but Glen very, very resourceful in defence. Obviously, we mentioned Glass there. When he drops back, he's such a good defensive midfielder. And Ryan Dugan is maybe the best player in the club championship at full back at the moment. He was terrific in the Ulster final too, and very, very strong last Sunday also. So they're very, very strong defensively, and through the two Dohertys, very, very quick on the counter attack too. So that makes them very, very dangerous opponents once they get on top.
I think there's got to be a lot of frustration from Monaleen coming for the weekend, though. You mentioned that 4 points and no score lead. They became 6-4 by half time. That's nearly 20 minutes Monaleen went without a score in the first half, and in the end Peter Cook, Desi Keneally scored 10 of the 12 points between them. Like, realistically, there just weren't enough people chipping in to keep that scoreboard going.
Yeah, and that's probably been the way from them before. Desi Keneally scored 10 points against Westport that day. Peter Cook wasn't playing in the Connacht quarter final, and Keneally was really, really sharp that day. But he was allowed the space in front of the goals. Westport were just after coming off the back of their first Mayo title a couple of weeks earlier, so it was difficult for them to reset in those circumstances. And Desi went to town on them that day, but they weren't overly impressive from an attacking point of view in any of the other Connacht games, I felt. And as we said, that running game really does lend itself in certain circumstances, but not playing a team like Glen, who set up so defensively. And I felt they ran down so many cul-de-sacs and didn't really threaten for a goal either at any stage. They didn't really force their way inside the last line of defence of Glen enough, or at any stage really, to threaten. And while they'll have regrets about Desi Keneally missed that free, Peter Cook just pulled another kick as well that probably could have got them closer and perhaps even forced extra time. But I always felt Glen had that little advantage on the counter attack through those two Dohertys that made them just slightly better.
Yeah, you felt that was a crucial moment. I know it was a difficult free for Desi Keneally, the one 7 minutes from time in normal time, but potentially could have brought the game back to a one-score game if that had gone over.
Yeah, it was a 1-point game then, and it was on the edge of the D. It was actually quite difficult, and he had done so well all throughout the day. But I think that might have been the turning point in the game. But sure, look, they brought it back to a 3-point game, and it was the last kick of the game. And I don't know, it was strange. He went for goal. He laid it off to Peter Cook, wasn't it? And then, went for goal then. And we almost thought up in the press box that it was a foot block, because I think referee just put his hands out. And I was like, is this going for a penalty?
It was Dave Goff signaling the end of the game, wasn't it?
Yes, but Dave Goff, and he was signaling the end of the game, but it almost looked like he was saying a penalty. So we were sort of looking around going, no, this is drama. But no, it was the end of the game, thankfully for Glen anyway. They were delighted at that point. But I know I spoke to some of them after, and they said the same thing, that we thought, oh no, this is going for a penalty. But yeah, it was drama. So that was probably the main goal chance. As Colm said, they didn't have overly a lot of goal chances. They couldn't get in to that point to actually get in on goal. But it was all Desi Keneally really with his frees to keep them in the game.
We'll talk about the game in a lot more detail next week, Colm. But your own feeling about this final then? Glen are obviously on a tremendous journey to get here. They've beaten the All-Ireland finalist Kilcoo on their way to the final. Kilmacud going back in after the pain of last year. Who do you fancy on Sunday week?
I think Kilmacud Crokes, but if Glen get ahead in this game, well, I feel that they will be very, very hard to given the way they set up with Conor Glass sitting back. I think they really have that down to a very fine art. But Crokes at the other end are really, really strong defensively too, and what Conor Glass does for Glen, Rory O'Carroll will do for Crokes too. And the defenders, Adrian Jones, Andrew McGowan, Dan O'Brien, who are all in really, really top form too. And as we said, they haven't conceded a goal for so long now. I'd be concerned about Crokes midfield. They have a lot of mobility up front as well. But ultimately, the great X factor here is Shane Walsh. What type of game will Shane Walsh have? I felt he was reserved. He had some great moments, kicked a great score, made a couple of exhilarating runs to create 2 goal chances actually in either half. But he sat off the play quite a lot, and Cormac Coffey tracked him well. But what I said about Conor Glass will also always apply to Shane Walsh. He can just come off the base. He hadn't his most prominent game from play against Derry in last year's All-Ireland semi-final, and then came out in the All-Ireland final and had delivered one of the great performances, as we know. So he can do that. He's always capable of doing that. Crokes didn't have Shane Walsh last year, nor did they have Paul Mannion, and they brought Kilcoo right to the end of extra time and forced that goal out of them. Probably should have won the game. So put Walsh into that team, perhaps 15 minutes from Paul Mannion, and that gives them a very, very strong hand. But I feel Glen are very well constructed in how to defend. They're going to be extremely hard to break down. That said, I think Walsh is the X factor. He's the determining factor here. If he goes out and has one of those games, I think it'll be Crokes' game with a little bit of help from Paul Mannion. But also players like Shane Cunningham as well have been in really good form for the two, and Hugh Kenny. So there's a lot for Crokes to work on, obviously, with how they didn't close out the game the last day. But it's a timely reminder, one that you probably you don't need a screensaver for, as Robbie suggested. I don't think so. I think the memory of those last few minutes will really stir them over the next few weeks. And having lost last year, there's always that bit of hurt. It might just carry them over the line this time.
Colm, great to catch up with you. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Colm.
You mentioned Shane Walsh. Obviously, you were watching him from the stands in Croke Park at the weekend. He comes to life, because I am in my notes here the fact that all the Crokes forwards except for Walsh scored from play in the first half. He scored a free.
He got a free.
And then at times he looked like he was drifting a bit out of the game. But you can obviously see better than we can on the TV that he comes to life when they attack.
Yeah, I was sort of watching him off the ball quite a lot, because I know previously there have been reports that he was looking up at the screen and he judges his runs that way. So I was sort of watching him quite a bit more at the weekend, and he lacked probably a little bit of energy, that we normally expect from his standards. I think Colm alluded to it there, that he wasn't involved in the game as much as we would expect. He was that bit quieter. So after the game, I was sort of expecting maybe them say he was maybe had a cold or something during the week and he wasn't fully at his full fitness. But as you said, all that aside, when he gets on the ball, well, he just creates constantly, and he had those 2 goal chances, one particularly in the second half that most definitely should have been a goal. It just wasn't given back to him in time. But yeah, he just always creates something out of nothing, and it's his pace. It's frightening. Like it's honestly frightening. He takes off and he's very hard to stay with. So yeah, it's hard to look by Kilmacud when they have the likes of Shane Walsh, when he can turn on this superstar performance and no one else can. So it is hard to look by them in that way. And obviously Paul Mannion, he was kicking a few scores before the game, in the warm-up. He was involved. But yeah, was he to come on or not? I don't know. But yeah, he might play a small part. I'm sure they would.
Robbie Brennan said he was 2 weeks. We won't really know until a bit closer to. We hope he can have some involvement.
Yeah.
I was just reading his quotes in the press conference. This is Robbie Brennan, the Kilmacud Crokes manager. He said Paul is close at this stage. He's running and kicking. I think everyone is happy with where he's at. It's just whether he's able to go back in. He hasn't played since, which was referring back to his injury in the Dublin Championship in late September. So it's a big ask at this stage. But he has 2 more weeks. The final was always a possibility. Monday. The plan for him time-wise was to be back if we got to the final, but if he can play or not is another thing. So that kind of reveals that he is, because I mean, we were talking last week to Andrew McGowan, he made the point that he's been back in doing some training. I think he did about 15 minutes of the warm-up. I think some people were counting at the weekend.
Yeah, he did a bit of it, and he was doing quite a lot of kicking. I always think if you're kicking, you know, you must be thereabouts. So I'd say they would like to see some part of him play, you know, in the final, because obviously it's a major blow if he wasn't to play. But yeah, obviously you need to be up to the fitness and the whole lot. You know, it's an All-Ireland final in Croke Park, so yeah, it's a lot of time to have spent away to jump back in. But I'm sure that they're going to hope to see something out of him. But yeah, even all that said, my head is still telling me that Glenn can do this, I think.
I really can't call it. Like, we have another week now to ponder about this, but just based on the evidence of the two games, it's very difficult.
It's very, very difficult. Obviously, the midfield of Glenn is probably what's standing out in my mind, but look, it's Kilmacud. Yeah, you're never going to write them off in a million years.
That's Sunday week. So the hurling's going to be at 1:30 on Sunday week at Croke Park, and the football's going to be the second game at 3:30. So Croke Park will host two double headers this coming weekend, starting with the hurling games, which are on Saturday. So the 5 o'clock start is the Junior Hurling Championship final. Ballygiblin of Cork back in the decider again against Eastkey of Sligo. That is the 5 p.m. game. And then 7 p.m, we were chatting about Monaleen a little bit earlier, of Limerick up against Tureen of Mayo. And then on Sunday, focus goes on to the football. We're talking about the semi-finals a little bit earlier from last weekend, but the Junior Football Championship final, Fossa of Kerry up against Stewartstown Harps of Tyrone, is the 1:30 game. It's Kerry versus Tyrone in the intermediate decider as well. Rathmore of Kerry up against Galbally Pierces at 3:30. So another bumper weekend of action to look forward to. We'll be looking back on those games and previewing the All-Ireland Club Senior Finals next week. We'll chat to you then. Thanks again.
The Club Championship Show on OTB in partnership with AIB. Proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. #the toughest.